So sometimes radio people shouldn't do video. And this is one of the stops.
Hey everybody, welcome to Beat Down After Bell on Between Rounds Radio. I am TJ DeSantis. Have an issue.
You can't see my
Webcam. I'll worry about it in a moment if you're watching on YouTube. Sorry. It'll be a couple seconds until you see my big dumb face. I'm here with, I won't say dumber faces because both these guys can beat me up, but Micah Miller is in studio on the line. Are you in Florida right now, Mo? Where are you at? Can Mo hear us? Mo.
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
Oh, there we go. He had his microphone muted because I told him to. Mo, former Strike Force King, Mo Lawal, here as well. Just wrapped up a little while ago in the Golden One Center in Sacramento, California. Jermaine Durandamy finishes Aspen Ladd in the main event. I'm going to start with you, Mo, because people can see you right now, and they can't see me, and I got to navigate that. But some technical issues, I think, maybe in the main event with referee Herb Dean, who halts the contest at just 16 seconds of round number one. Aspen Ladd dropped, and then I would say finished, but not even really finished because Jermaine Durandamy, I think, maybe hit her one other time after the initial punch on the feet on the floor. Might have even caught her more on the shoulder than anything, but Herb Dean had already made up his mind. The end comes, and Aspen Ladd tastes defeat for the first time in her career. Mo, your thoughts on the initial stoppage by Herb Dean in the main event?
Well, I think that he made the right move, but the issue was when Jermaine followed up with that follow-up shot, the kill shot, she missed and hit Aspen in the chest. But by that time, I feel like Herb Dean stepped in to stop her from getting.
I'm working on it. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go the other way. So I think the fight was stopped early, and I think that
As he was saying, you know, she missed the kill shot following up. It hit her. It looked to me like in the shoulder, and you see Aspen grabbing for the ankles, trying to, you know, recover the guard, get active with the butterfly hooks or something like that. But by then the action had already been stopped, and you know, it's always unfortunate to see a main event in that way.
There's a fine line between an early stoppage and a late stoppage, and I feel like the more appropriate outcome of the two, if you have to pick as a referee, would you rather stop the fight early or late? Well, early because you live to fight another day, right? You can always sort of make up for, well, at least I didn't let it go too far and too in the wrong direction. But at the same time, when you're talking about, I mean, Brandon Fitzgerald tonight used the word uber prospect when describing Aspen Ladd. I mean, we're talking about her fighting a former champion. Had she, you know, come out on top, Aspen Ladd may be fighting for a title in her next fight. I mean, it's hard to say what's next for Amanda Nunes. Is Aspen Ladd that person? Well, at least it's someone she hasn't fought before. You know what I mean? And you know, maybe Jermaine Durandamy is that answer, but I don't know. As a fighter, is the right word or the right words always, oh, I'd rather go a little bit longer than I should than not, because that's the fighter mentality a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah.
If would you rather be robbed, or would you rather maybe suffer physical consequences later in life? Or is that over dramatic?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the finish situation as far as how the stoppage plays out. For me, if you get hit and you fall down and there's an opportunity where the fighter is on the ground and they're facing the attacking opponent, I think
clear tells that I see a lot is when the fighter turns away, right? When you see a fighter drop, taking some kind of punishment, some kind of offense from the finishing fighter, you can always tell if the fighter turns to the finishing fighter and they try to continue some kind of offense. try to wrap the offensive fighter up in some way. That tells me that
Fighter is trying to not only actively defend himself but improve the position. When the fighter turns away from the attacking fighter, that's the kind of posture that you normally see when the fighter's done. You know, and we saw that a couple weeks ago with Junior Dos Santos when he took on Francis Ngannou. You know, he made clear posture with his body that he was finished in that fight, and I don't know, that didn't really show to me in this main event.
There's a clear elephant in the room, and I'm going to throw it back to you, Mo, real quick. Sorry about the tech issues. We will get this ironed out here. But, Mo, did you see the weight cut yesterday? Did you see the weigh-in of Aspen Ladd?
Yeah, I saw it.
How much did that factor into Herb Dean's decision in stopping this fight when he did? It shouldn't, but at the same time, like, I'm sure Herb was well aware because, I mean, the MMA community was a bit of a buzz yesterday with these weigh-in results. Do you think that factored in at all?
Not at all. She got hit with a clean right hand. If you watch the replay, Jermaine did a hand trap with the lead hand, pulled it down, threw a right hand over the top of that. Now, when Aspen fell, she turned. So when she fell, like she turned, like it was like she turned in the semicircle, and she had no idea where she was at. If Jermaine would have landed that left hook that hit her in the chest, it would have been game over, and people would have been like, "Oh, Herb Dean let that go too long." So, but the thing is, when she threw that kill shot, she missed, and by that time, if you watch, Herb Dean was stepping in to break it up to stop it. So, you know, I think that more than anything, he did the right thing, but Jermaine just missed.
That's interesting. I mean, what you're saying, Mo, I think maybe there's some credence to it, but I feel like on the outside looking in, knowing what we know about the weigh-ins, knowing that Aspen Ladd, I mean, really got hit one time, she immediately buckled. Like, I feel like we've seen Herb Dean allow fighters to fight through a lot more than what he allowed Aspen Ladd to weather. Like, I mean, I don't, maybe she got proper position. You're right, Mo, but to me, I still feel like positioning isn't enough to stop
Not
a
just
fight.
that, but I think that you know, another thing, and this might sound bad, but I think Herb he's seen the difference in the level. If you watch Aspen as a grappler, when you seen her in the stand up, she was moving real stiff, and the moment she got hit with that one clean shot, he knows Jermaine's a killer, and she's real aggressive. So I think maybe he stopped it to prevent the young girl from taking, the young lady from taking extra damage, unnecessary damage. Because that one shot, it was one clean shot, and she turned, she fell to her knees, and her body turned all the way to her right.
Right.
I think you were alluding to something a little bit, TJ, about Aspen Ladd and how Herb was going to referee her versus how he was going to referee maybe even Jermaine, or maybe even another fighter, and that's something I don't think you can do. I think when you step into the cage,
you're not supposed to, but that's a human
equal.
instinct, though, right? That's the human nature of overseeing something, and I mean, I think Herb is one of the best in the business, hands down. I think Herb is one of the best in the business, incredibly experienced, and I would say, I mean, 9 out of 10 times, I agree with what Herb does as an official, but it's just very difficult. I guess at the end of the day, there may be some controversy there. Michael Bisping brought it up in the post-fight interview. If you're going to lose a fight, Aspen Ladd at least has a bit of an out. You know, I mean, granted, she got knocked out. I'm sure she's not feeling that way in the back at Golden One Center tonight in Sacramento. But for my money, I just feel like she should have been able to fight through it a little bit more. And there's no real right answer to subjective decisions when it comes to safety. Yeah. And I don't know, it is what it is. Well, where do you guys see Jermaine Durandamy at this point? Because, I mean, this is a big win for her. She's a former champion at 145 pounds. She never lost that title. She vacated it for any number of reasons. Some you may feel are valid. Others people feel is the fact that she didn't want to fight Chris Cyborg. Is she next in line for Amanda Nunes? Mo, your thoughts?
I'd like to see her fight. I'd like to see her fight Kat Zingano. My bad, that's her name in the past. But her versus Kat Zingano, or whoever else is ranked up there. I don't really know. I'm not familiar with the rankings at 135.
Right.
But I feel like Jermaine just beat somebody. She's been ranked number one for a while, but the thing is, she ain't been active.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I feel like maybe they should give her one more fight to stay active or stay sharp, or maybe she could lose that next fight. They're kind of in a weird situation, so I don't know. Maybe she might be next.
I know Zingano, I think she lost her last fight against Megan Anderson. That was at 145 pounds, so maybe there's an argument at 35. But to me, I feel like from a marketing standpoint, the fight with Amanda Nunes and Jermaine Durand, to me, that's marketable. It's one current champion, multiple divisional champion, but it's a former champion and Jermaine at 45 fighting Nunes. I feel like, it's not going to sell huge pay-per-views, but that's a good enough main event for me. That's a fantastic co-main event if you want to put it on John Jones card or something like that. Your thoughts, Micah?
Yeah, as far as her being a contender for the championship next, I think she need, as Mo said, I think she needs maybe one more clean win, because the title fight she had with Holly, I don't think that it was a clean win in my opinion. You know, there was a lot to be made of that fight.
There was a lot that was dirty with that fight, right?
Yeah.
After the bell touch.
Yeah, a lot. There was a lot wrong with that fight.
Yeah.
And now you fast forward to this fight, and I don't think that the win was necessarily that clean either. So I think she needs one like a trademark win. You know what I mean? A real trademark win to really
showcase fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Showcase fight.
Yeah, I feel like we don't get a lot of showcase fights anymore. I feel like we don't get. Actually, I take that back. I feel like we had a showcase night in our main event, our co-main event, and it was supposed to be Ricky Simone beating a UFC Hall of Famer and really cementing himself as a prospect at 135, and that's not the case. Somehow Uriah Faber is the next big prospect almost atop the 135-pound division, calling out Henry Cejudo. I don't want to say that the UFC was essentially basically moving forward with Simone getting a victory and thinking about it that way, but you can kind of see the writing on the wall at times and how older names are used to catapult the next generation of fighter. And, well, Uriah Faber at 40 years old is all of a sudden knocking on the door potentially of a title fight at 135 pounds. Mo, what are your thoughts on the California kid's breakout performance here and ending his retirement?
The last thing fighters lose, especially punchers, is their power.
Mm-hmm.
And Uriah can always crack, and it showed. Clean counter. I'm not gonna lie. He looked shaky at times. He looked kind of I feel like he looked kind of rusty and kind of he couldn't gauge the range, and he was kind of herky jerky and kind of tense. But when he just found the opening, head off center, clean right hand, and that was it.
That really is what it was. Like Uriah Faber at this point getting this win. We talked about the stoppage in the main event being a little bit questionable. I'm not going to say that this was along the same lines. I don't want this night to take away from the winners, Jermaine Durandamy and Uriah Faber, but I do wonder if Simone should have been afforded the opportunity to fight back a little bit more. He was definitely hurt, but he like Aspen Ladd, I think, still was trying to engage with the opponent. Micah, we can, again, talk subjectively all day about what we would have liked to have seen and what actually happens. That's based on the referee's decision, but what did you think about the stoppage?
Yeah, I hate to sound like a broken record here again, but I wasn't a fan of the stoppage. I think referee Mike Beltran damn near had to tackle Ricky Simone to make him stop fighting Uriah Faber. He got hit with a clean right hand. He fell down, and he was trying to engage from his back, with everything that he had. And I don't think Uriah landed anything very significant while he was on the ground. and referee Mike Beltran said he'd seen enough, and he stopped it right away. And with MMA, I've always said this to anybody that'll listen, is whenever I see somebody get dropped, I gotta see some sort of groundwork first. Unless, of course, like a situation last week with Ben Askren, where the guy is out as soon as they make contact. He's completely unconscious. But that didn't appear apparent to me with Ricky Simone, and I think it's unfortunate that it stopped the way it was.
Micah and I were talking a little bit off the air before we started the program about there being different points throughout a stoppage where it's a good stoppage and then maybe it's not such a good stoppage. And I think that there were times in these stoppages tonight that had Herb Dean or Mike Beltran stepped in immediately, we'd have been like, okay, that's a good stoppage. But then a few, sometimes even milliseconds go by, and you're like, okay, now they've responded in a way that allows them to maybe fight a little bit more, to either weather the storm or do something. They seem to be a bit more coherent. And then, I mean, again, hindsight is 20/20. But again, we're talking about something that is so subjective. Do you ever feel that way, Mo? Like a fighter will suffer a blow that maybe flashes them and they're not conscious, but they hit the floor and all of a sudden they're back in it. It's like if they didn't hit the floor and wake up, that good stoppage there if it had stepped in, but the referee doesn't get there in time, and then they do something and it almost makes the referee look bad for finally getting there and stopping it when they did.
Well, in this case, I'm gonna be real with y'all. I disagree with y'all.
All right, that's good.
Here's why.
All right.
When a fighter gets rocked and shoots a high crotch on the referee, he's not all there. And on top of that, when they say stop or the fight's over with, you don't keep stumbling at your opponent trying to fight him. You kind of just stop because you just stop. Unless you're mad, or unless your head's not there.
Right.
You're not trying to get fined. You're not trying. I'm pretty sure he's a good kid. He was just dazed. He was still dazed. He was still out of me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how many times have we've seen that many times where a fighter tries to shoot a single leg on the referee that steps in, and obviously the emotions are going there. And
you're talking milliseconds, though. You're expecting him to stop fighting for his life in half a second just because the referee jumps in, Well,
also, too, I think it's not necessarily tunnel vision, but I think there are times when you're fighting and maybe your focus and attention isn't necessarily where it needs to be, and you're just grabbing for things. And it doesn't mean you're necessarily out of it, but you're...
Well, but I'm just saying you're grabbing for things. But when you feel pants, it's not a no fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're grabbing for things, but, like, you just know.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? I know I know between, like, pants and some bare legs. Right. You know what I'm saying? Shoes. Like, I think that he was an autopilot. I think that maybe if he gave him a few seconds, because your rival was landing that clean, if they gave him a few seconds maybe to shake back, maybe something could happen. But really, when it stopped, he was grabbing the referee's legs trying to take him down.
Right. And I think, going back to what we said earlier, I think we'd rather be in this situation where we're arguing the stoppages should have been maybe a little bit later than they actually were. Rather than earlier. Safety is always paramount, and arguing a fight should have gone a little bit longer is better than saying, they took some unnecessary damage. Let's talk about Uriah Faber, though. Obviously, big win over Ricky Simone tonight. Faber calls out Henry Cejudo. Cejudo's going to be on the shelf for a while. He's going to have surgery. Obviously, a road to recovery is on deck for the UFC's flyweight and bantamweight champion. But I don't know if he necessarily deserves it per se, Uriah Faber, but it definitely would be marketable. It'd be a great fight a year from now if it was International Fight Week and they were trying to make a double wide, triple wide sort of title fight. But Uriah Faber fighting for a UFC title at 40 years old, 41 years old in 2019, it seems odd, but it's still marketable. People in Golden One Center tonight were definitely on board with it. Micah, how realistic is a potential title fight with Henry Cejudo for the California kid?
Man, that's a good question. You and I talked about before the show. I was saying that Uriah Faber is going to try to get a title shot, and I think that he wouldn't have come back if he didn't think that he was going to get some sort of opportunity for another big fight. Maybe not a title fight, but some big fight, some fight with a name that he thinks he could get a good payday for. And,
Right.
You know, I know that it's not ideal for him that Henry Cejudo's going to be out for a year. I don't think he knew that information when he decided to make the comeback, but I think that he came back with one thing in mind, and that's to get a title fight with somebody like Henry Cejudo, who is a bantamweight,
Right.
but makes flyweight. You know, somebody who's not going to be huge for the weight class. You know, somebody they could fight at 35 that isn't going to be a monster. You know, that might be a little smaller, and he could have a good competitive fight with.
He's Micah Miller. I'm TJ DeSantis, King Mo the Wall, hanging out. This is Beatdown After the Bell of UFC Fight Night 155. Looking at Uriah Faber and getting this win, it's obvious that, like you said, Mo, he still has power. Power's the last thing to go. But beating Ricky Simone and then being competitive with Henry Cejudo, those are two different things. If Uriah Faber were to get that opportunity to stand in front of the UFC's Bantamweight King, how do you think he would do? Do you think Uriah Faber would have a legitimate shot to dethrone the Messenger?
He better get behind Pedro Munoz and Aljamain Sterling first.
Yeah, but the name Uriah Faber is the pass that gets you ahead of that.
Yeah, maybe. But the thing is, here's the thing. Henry Cejudo's out for a while.
Right.
So, you know, you just can't wait and then jump the line. He has to fight somebody to jump the line. So, one of those guys that are dangerous for him.
I don't know, man. When I think when you're a Hall of Famer, when you're Uriah Faber, when you can potentially sell out an arena if you're in a title fight like Sacramento, I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but a year, nah, it ain't gonna happen. They're gonna have Uriah Faber fight somebody else first. Probably one of them two. If they're serious about having them fight for the belt, he's got to fight one of them 2 or 3 killers, you know what I'm saying, in that weight class.
So how does he do against those guys? I mean, can Uriah Faber get another victory in your mind that would cement a no doubt, no brain title fight? Can he actually, on paper, earn a title fight in your mind?
I think Pedro Munoz hurts him bad. And I think Aljamain's too slick, too long, too explosive, and has great cardio and just eats him up as well. And he can grapple, so I just think those guys are too young and too fresh. You know, Uriah's young and fresh right there, but he has some wear and tear. But I don't know. I think those two right there, they're riding a wave of confidence. And they're also, if you watch Uriah fight, he's in like my era of fighting. Like you can see, like the game has kind of changed, and you can see Ricky Simone was all over him.
Right.
He was on his ass for a little bit, and then he got caught. If Uriah didn't catch him early, the fight came in a whole different direction.
Ricky Simone tastes defeat just for the second time in his career, moving to 15-2. Obviously, a step back for Simone. I'm curious, Micah, in your opinion, what does this loss say about Simone? I mean, you can talk about the stoppage. Maybe he should have been given the opportunity to fight a little bit longer, but the bottom line is he got dropped and ultimately stopped by a 40-year-old Uriah Faber. How much do we read into that?
I mean, I think I saw a lot of good things from Ricky tonight. You know, he came out and he wasn't fazed by the Hall of Famer Uriah Faber sold out arena in Sacramento. You know, all of that. I don't think he was fazed at all by any of that, and you could see it right away when the fight started. He was in Uriah's face immediately. You know, this fight lasted only 59 seconds, I think. You know, he was in his face right away, and you know, I thought Uriah looked a little hurt when he got hit with the first clean shot that Ricky hit him with. He looked a little wobbled to me. I'm not sure about that. You know, Uriah can only really know about that, but I thought he looked a little rocked to me, and you know, maybe that constant aggression that he showed a little bit, that's what led to him walking into that right hand. But you know, early stoppage aside, I think I saw some good things from Ricky tonight, and I think he needs to stay the course that he's been on.
I mean, losses in mixed martial arts, thankfully, don't, you know, spell a downfall, rapid descent, similar to like boxing at times. So I think Simone will probably regroup and not say I can't say be better for this type of performance, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. He got dropped and hurt and ultimately stopped, but I still believe that Ricky Simon probably has a pretty bright future ahead of him. Let's finally talk about a fight that the controversial ending is non-existent.
Thank goodness.
Josh Emmett able to take out Mirsad Bektic, hit him and hurt him with a jab, and then finish him on the floor with some nasty ground and pound. Right hand goes underneath the armpit of Bektic and really, really hurt him. Referee steps in and halts the action. 4 minutes, 25 seconds of round number 1. Josh Emmett, huge victory tonight in Sacramento. Mirsad Bektic, a guy that has spent some time at ATT. I'm sure both of you guys have been around him. He had a big prospect tag on him in the past, but tonight belongs to Josh Emmett. Mo, you can kick us off on your thoughts of this fight and what you saw out of both of these gentlemen.
Well, they're both very similar. I just felt like Emmett seemed a little more confident in his style, seemed a little looser. I don't know. It's weird because Mirsad walked right into that stiff piston jab, and Emmett hopped on him, landed some clean shots, hit him with the club punch, which I call with the club punch. It's an uppercut underneath the armpit. When a guy turns his back on you, uppercut him.
Yeah.
Underneath the armpit, the club punch. Hit him with a clean club punch, and then cleaned him up some. Emmett is dangerous, man. Very heavy hands, aggressive, good volume. Strong. He's gonna be tough to beat, man. He's gonna be very tough to beat.
Mo, you're a student of the game. You like to talk about boxing technique. We talk about the jab, and I think it's really one of the more underutilized techniques in mixed martial arts. If you have a really good jab, I think you're significantly doing better than a lot of your opposition. I think George St. Pierre made almost a career out of his jab later on in his run. But when you think about the jab as an offensive maneuver and actually hurting people, it's not often that we discuss it as a real weapon, more of a range finder. When it is offensive, people bring up, Anderson Silva on Forrest Griffin, and we're talking about, just a handful of events where it really hurts and rattles and drops people. What was it about Emmett's jab tonight that ultimately led to that sort of result? Was it as much him throwing it, or did it have something to do with Bektic walking into it the way that he did?
It was both. He has power, and he turns the jab over real well, and he pushes off his back foot, steps forward with the jab, kind of like Larry Holmes making that strong piston jab. Well, at the same time he was doing that, Mirsad stepped right into the jab, right in the chin, floored him.
On the roundtable this week, Dean Thomas was talking about this fight, and he actually picked Josh Emmett, which I was a little bit surprised, being that Bektic had spent time at American Top Team, and Dean sort of cited the idea that Emmett may just be a little bit more resilient in this fight, and maybe a little more, I don't want to say mentally tough, because that wasn't necessarily the words that he was using, but basically was implying that if this fight kind of got dirty and grimy and the damage was put on him, that he thought Emmett might come out the other side. What are your thoughts on Emmett and also Bektic, Micah? I know that he had this prospect title, and not that he's lost any bright future that people were sort of prognosticating for him, but we don't have the same feelings about Mirsad Bektic that we did, I think, from a buzz standpoint, like it was 2015, 2016.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own feelings about that as far as the prospects watch stuff we're doing right now. I mean, I think we're so hyper obsessed with what's next that we really forgo what's now. And with him, man, he was touted as just the next biggest, strongest, most dangerous thing that was coming down the pipe, and for good reason. He was the best prospect, but people just don't. We're so obsessed with this in culture that people just don't give us or give the athlete enough time to really develop. They want to throw these prospects in right away and throw them into the fire. And I'm not saying Mirsad's not ready for a guy like Josh Emmett, but I think when you get touted that kind of label so early, and you fight the best of the best in your early 20s all the way up to where he's at now. I think he's 28 years old now. If you're not a world champion yet, because you were touted so early, you're kind of looked at as a bust. And, I don't think that's right, man. Josh Emmett's a good fighter. He fought a great fight tonight. I thought it was a very good MMA boxing match for the fight that ended up playing out. But he just came up on the wrong end of some really good technique. A guy that's 34 years old who's a little more seasoned than him, and has some big power.
Let's talk about pressure a little bit. I think both you guys have fought under that sort of duress, and maybe duress isn't the adequate word to describe it, but I think both of you guys fought careers that expectations were put upon you relatively quickly. Micah, you were, fighting in not the shadow of your brother, but when you were coming up, people couldn't talk about you without mentioning Cole's name. Mo, you fought, and you had a good, accomplished collegiate wrestling background. You had success internationally before coming to the States. People were prognosticating what you guys could do in the sport, maybe even before it was really warranted. Not that you weren't talented, but I mean, generally there's more of a maturation process than, taking a few fights and all of a sudden fighting under the brightest lights. And Mo, I mean, you were fighting under the bright lights in Japan, fight one. Is that something you're aware of, Mo? Were you aware of the pressure that was put upon you? And when did you start to maybe feel like, okay, people are actually expecting a lot out of me? I'm the favorite in this fight. I'm the one who's supposed to shine.
I never thought that, for a while, because I know when I fought Travis View, people hit me up and they're like, Mo, he has like 64 fights and he's a heavyweight and he's running a 10-fight win streak and this and that and this. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know, but that's what I'm gonna go do. It's fight time. So like, I didn't think the pressure was on me pretty much because I wasn't really expected to win that fight. People thought that I was crazy for taking it. For most of the fights I took early in my career, I had like little experience at all. I barely had any experience in my fights. Everyone had so much more experience than me, so I just fought to win. And I just do what I could do to get the W, pretty much.
Did you ever feel pressure?
Nah, because really, like, I was moved so fast. Like, everyone, if there was pressure on anybody, is my opponents. My opponents had, all the fights. I'm coming in 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Like, I looked at it the reverse way. You should be beating a guy that has a lot less fights than you. If you have 30 fights or 20 fights, a guy that's 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 should not be beating you.
What about you, Micah? I mean, did you feel pressure being Cole's brother, or were you under the idea that your career was your own and it didn't matter?
No, I mean, anytime anybody talks about, me versus my own brother and this and that, I never viewed it that way. I always thought that me and my brother were working together towards something. So like anytime people would like kind of try to put one versus the other, if in my view, it was always us. We were trying to accomplish something, training together for most of our careers. That was usually the big thing for me. So the sibling stuff never really bothered me. The parts that did bother me, though, and I'll be the first to admit I was way too young to handle stuff like this, was I would read my own press, which is like the biggest no-no looking back. I would read articles that people would write about me just because I was so, I guess, probably starved for attention. When somebody would write an article about me expecting like big things, like that would like kind of fuel me, like, that would kind of get in my head. And, the first, I guess, big pressure fight that I really had was I was fighting Brian Bowles, who was undefeated at the time.
This is an amateur, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, pro rules, but yeah, amateur.
Right. We're not getting paid, right?
Yeah. But, the fact that I was supposed to lose that fight didn't bother me. Like, I did better in that fight than I did in my WEC fight where I fought Cub Swanson, and I was reading, Jordan Breen writing articles about me and how I was picked to win, So when I was reading things about me that I was supposed to win, that kind of messed with me a little bit. but I actually did better when people thought I would lose because I didn't feel as much pressure, really.
You triangled Brian Bowles, right?
Yeah, flying triangle, TJ. Let's get it right.
Sorry.
Let's get it right.
Style points are everything.
We went airborne.
Nice. All right, let's talk about another fight tonight. Carl Roberson victorious. He gets a split decision over Wellington Turman, 29-28 for two judges, Michael Bell and Wade Vieira. Derek Cleary seeing it 29-28 for Turman. Looking like the media scores were firmly in the corner of Turman, but it is Carl Roberson who gets the nod tonight. Mo, were you watching this fight enough to give us a scorecard?
Yeah, I thought Turman won. I thought it was clear. I thought it was very clear he won. I don't see what the judges were watching. Roberson made the fight so much harder because he initiated the clinch.
Right.
He initiated the grappling. He can't have the guy out of there in the first round, but he kept on clinching him.
Yeah, and I felt like the commentators, Michael Bisping and Brendan Fitzgerald, felt the same way going into the final few moments of the fight, that Roberson needed to do something to get the judge's score or get a stoppage to earn the decision, because there's like 15 seconds left in the fight, and he was kind of standing over Turman, and they're basically saying, "What are you waiting for? You got to go, you got to go." And little did we know that Mike Bell and Wade Vieira were already in the corner of Baby K. What's interesting to me, Mo, is when you look at this decision, we're talking about judges that are, not new to the UFC landscape. Mike Bell, Derek Cleary, those are guys that have got a lot of UFC judging experience. Derek Cleary, to be fair, was in the side of Wellington Turman, but Mike Bell, he gets it wrong, according to you and a lot of people watching tonight on the internet. You never really know. I mean, like, despite judging experience or even patterns in judging, you never know how these guys are going to come down, and consistency is everything. But sometimes, I mean, the only thing I think that judges are really consistent with is being inconsistent. Yes, I know. I'm hilarious. How aware were you guys in, fighting in a fight that was, getting to the latter part of a round, or the fight overall as a whole? Would you ever change your strategy? We'll start with you, Mike. Did you ever change your strategy to actually fight to win a round rather than get a stoppage and take a stanza?
No, me personally, I always tried to fight to get a finish. And if you look at my record, over 85% of my wins are by finish, and pretty much all my 90% of my losses are by decision. So in my case, no, it was never really about trying to eke out a fight, because usually if I won, I won by a finish, and if I lost, we kind of knew that I was down on the cards anyway. So, and given where the judges usually are, you're never gonna I never expected to win a fight by decision anyway.
What about you, Mo? Did you ever go back to your corner and be concerned with the scorecards, or were they completely out of your mind?
Afterwards, like, there are times I thought that there are fights I thought I won and I didn't get the decision, but I'd go for I try to land the go for the finish, but a lot of times you can't force it. So I try to find it when it's there, but I don't force it. But I don't know, man. The judges, I feel like eventually the next generation of judges will be better.
I agree.
I think you guys are really optimistic. Really optimistic. Not only because the next generation we're going to think is more educated and more competent and able, but largely when it comes to judging, it's kind of like a boys' club. And by that I mean you have to know somebody to get the opportunities. Otherwise, you spend your entire career trying to get the opportunity. I think California is a little bit different, and that I think Andy Foster does a fantastic job. He's been sort of outspoken in the past about judges having a good grasp of knowledge when it comes to fighting on the floor and knowing what is significant and what isn't significant. But time and time again, I think we see some prominent judges, and we don't know really what their martial arts experience is, if any. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to be a martial artist to judge martial arts, but it definitely helps. You have a much better appreciation for what is effective and what isn't, and what looks significant and what may be a bit dubious. But I feel like a lot of those people are still going to get put in those positions because when it comes to certain jurisdictions and states, it's bureaucracy and red tape more than it is just going and saying, look, I'm a qualified martial artist, I have this and that, and here are my qualifications and my accolades. In life, it's a lot about who you know and who can do things for you. And I hope you're right. I really do. But I still feel like we're going to get a good amount of people judging fights at the highest level where you're kind of left scratching your head. Why were you appointed to this position?
Well, I hope that they make changes. For one, if I were in charge, or if I were in charge of this whole situation, I would make judges attend MMA seminars at least 3 or 4 times a year. Let them feel leg kicks. Let them feel the difference between a leg kick with the foot and the leg kick with the shin. Let them feel an arm bar. Let them feel a guillotine. Let them feel ineffective arm bars and guillotines. Let them feel everything, so they'll have an idea of what's effective. Because sometimes you can see a person in the guillotine, and it might not be there, and they might score that for a good submission, score that round for the person for just going for that sloppy submission attempt.
You know, I think you're right on something. I think judges should understand what certain positions feel like, so they can have a better indication of, like, for example, like Bravo chokes and Darce chokes. I think that sometimes we see fighters get a decent bite on a hold, and we think it's a lot worse than it actually is, but a guy can hang out there for 45 seconds to a minute and eventually get free. That means the choke is not on. You're not hanging out in a blood choke for 45 seconds and wiggling your way through. If it's locked on, you're going to go unconscious. I mean, I trained a decade ago, and I never rolled with anybody that had even the thought process of putting on a Bravo choke or anything like that. So, I mean, I don't even know what those things feel like, especially at the highest level. I think you're onto something there, Mel.
If you're in one, though, you're still in an offensive position where the guy is in it. And
sure,
that guy's in the more dominant position. So, not necessarily a dominant position, but a more dominant position.
Let's jump around a little bit here, because at the end of the first round in the Ryan Hall fight, Ryan Hall finishes the round with Darren Elkins in a fully locked on triangle. And I know that we can't make assertions that the fight would have been completely over, foregone conclusion, had there been another minute left in the fight. But Ryan Hall, a submission wizard, odds are if he gets a fully locked on triangle, you're going to go to sleep. My question in whether or not the judges should look into knowing what certain holds feel like, because we're at a time now where we're being more liberal with 10-8s. If you are locked in a choke and the bell rings, you're being saved by the bell. We don't seem to get the same sort of feeling about being saved by the bell due to a submission that we do if you're throwing a flurry of punches and you survive, to fight through maybe a sequence that you wouldn't have had it been a TKO. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's big.
Yeah, definitely.
That's big. If the fight ends and the round ends, as you saw with Ryan Hall, in a fully locked on triangle, and you don't see that as checkmate,
right?
You shouldn't be judging the fight.
Well, if you were a judge, Micah, would you have turned that round in 10-8? I mean, it was a pretty dominant round for Ryan Hall leading up to that, but to me, it's. I mean, I don't know if necessarily I would go 10-8, but I feel in my heart of heart that fight probably doesn't continue past that sequence.
No, the fight doesn't continue at all past that sequence.
So that's a 10-8, right?
I mean,
yep, 10-8.
Yeah, you would think, right? I mean, the triangle is locked on. I think the arm was across too.
It was,
and it's just a few body maneuvers away from Darren Elkins being completely unconscious with a guy like Ryan Hall with the triangle.
And what's funny about that is not only did no judge give that round 10-8, but it was a close fight. Two judges had a 29-28. One judge, Ron McCarthy, had a 30-27 for Ryan Hall. So I don't think a 29-28 scorecard is correct in that, and I especially don't think that even 30-27 really sort of proves the point of what that fight was all about. Ryan Hall almost knocked him out with a wheel kick. I mean, Ryan Hall did some weird things tonight, and I think that his striking was effective largely because his ground game is so terrifying. I mean, the way that he approaches fighters and does these rolls and attacks the legs, from range and standing. Darren Elkins was not able to be Darren Elkins in this fight. He wasn't able to attack Ryan Hall the way he would had he been fighting anybody else, and that was very apparent, which ultimately I think allowed him to get kicked upside the head and dropped with punches. I mean, Ryan Hall, submission wizard, tonight looked like he was the significantly better striker of the two, and maybe that's the case, but I think this is an example of mixed martial arts showing that your grappling can make you a much better striker. Because if this was a kickboxing affair, Ryan Hall's not throwing the type of strikes that he did, and he's not having the type of success that he did.
Agreed.
What do you think about Ryan Hall, Micah? I mean, your opinion of this guy who he lost his first career fight in mixed martial arts like 13 years ago. He's undefeated now in the UFC since winning the Ultimate Fighter. Some people don't like his style, but I mean, I think if you're a fan of martial arts, like you have to appreciate what he brings to the octagon and how he employs it.
I love Ryan Hall, and I love what he's doing because he's taking this kind of MMA blueprint that we've gotten so used to because of the way the cage is, the way the rules are with the 5-minute rounds, just all that stuff. It allows a certain kind of fighter to thrive, and that's influenced a certain kind of fighter to develop and be in the UFC. And you have a guy who's just, his strengths don't really tailor with that style, and he's taken this usual mold that we're so used to seeing, and he's turned it on its head, and he's taken his strengths, and everybody's afraid of him. You said Darren Elkins didn't feel like himself tonight. Nobody that's fought Ryan Hall has felt like himself, and
right.
that's for a reason. It's because Ryan Hall he's this monkey wrench in the MMA game, that if he's so far away at distance from you that he can spam all these crazy little kicks that he's been working on with he works with Wonderboy Thompson's coach, if I'm correct.
He's kind of bounced around a lot. I know in his corner tonight he had Faraz Sahabi and Kenny Florian, but he's from that part of the country.
Yeah, I know he's from Virginia. Yep. I think that was where his academy it is, and I know he has spent some extensive time with what's his name, is Ray Thompson?
Yes, Ray Thompson.
Yeah,
yep.
He spent some time with Ray Thompson, working on his strikes at range. So he's always so far away from you that he can just throw all this crazy stuff that gets you frustrated enough to close enough distance so that he can dive under you and initiate the connection he needs to start his game rolling. And he's gotten fighters in this situation where they don't want to get hit with all this crazy stuff, so they're so far away, and then they try to close the distance, and he dives under them, and then they get so frustrated because they can't really win either way.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's so many things I think that an educated eye can appreciate from Ryan Hall. It's kind of befuddling to me to know that the casual fans or the fans in the arena, I mean, Ryan Hall got booed tonight. Let's recap what he did. He almost finished with a triangle choke. He dropped him with his hands. He kicked him in the head with a spinning attack that floored Elkins. He went for a guillotine. He barely missed that. Like, this dude couldn't have been more aggressive while sort of being true to his technique than he was, and he still gets booed. Like, I don't understand it.
I think, TJ, I think with him, I think we're going to see better showings of Ryan Hall when he fights better competition. Because right now, these guys are really kind of playing this away game, trying to figure out. I think when you put him in there with somebody like a Cub Swanson,
sure.
I don't think that Cub's gonna be like that, so puzzled on the outside and then so afraid when he gets close to him. I think I know they're not, that you don't want to rush Ryan Hall, but I think with better competition, you're not going to see so much disengagement, if that makes sense.
Sure, I agree. Yeah, I definitely can see that. When we were sitting here, Micah, we were talking a little bit about like what the future might hold for Ryan Hall, and the name Crone Gracie came up, and Crone has a fight already scheduled. I think you said with Cub Swanson. Yeah. Mo, what are your thoughts on like this grappling mixed martial arts super fight that may be waiting in the wings in the future between someone like Crone Gracie and Ryan Hall? Do you think that is something you're interested in, and ultimately, do you think that maybe some of the fans that were booing tonight can they appreciate a fight of that caliber between such skilled jiu-jitsu practitioners?
I don't think the fans will ever appreciate anything, really.
Take that.
Let's be honest, let's be honest, because like people always want the next biggest thing. Then they want now. Anderson Silva had some great knockouts. The moment he had one boring fight, he sucks.
Well, I mean, that old adage, you're only as good as your last fight, like that definitely has always been a thing in combat sports, whether it's boxing or mixed martial arts.
And I think the thing about Hall, he does it's not sprawl and brawl, it's kick and pull or kick and dive.
It's a reverse sprawl.
Strike and dive. Yeah. It's reverse of that. And it's dangerous. It's going to take a high-level jiu-jitsu player to beat that. At the same time, they might get outpointed still because they might get outstruck. I don't know. He could be a hard person to beat.
Because the volume, I agree with Mo, because the volume that he throws on his feet, these guys look puzzled. He's throwing all these things, and they're like, man, that's whack, but they're not throwing anything back.
Right.
They're backing away because they don't want to be in range to get grappled. So during this, they're just losing. They're losing by taking all these strikes, or at least not even if they don't take them, they're not doing anything offensive. They're being put in a complete defensive box because of the fear of the weapons that he has. And that's why I said the higher level he goes, I think we're going to start to see better fights. Because if he rolls down to the ground, Crone Gracie is gonna advance to half guard and try to work his game, and we're gonna see a great grappling.
But will he? Will he need to? Because he might not need to. He just those kicks and spinning kicks, and he will jog and make Crone chase him and stop and throw something spinning leg kick, body kick, and just keep outpointing him. He's so long and slippery.
I think those guys grapple. My money, if they fight, it's going to hit the floor at some point.
I want to see it.
For my money.
But
yeah. I think that fight would do great in Japan.
Oh, yeah, it would. Absolutely, it would. Absolutely.
Mo says the fans don't appreciate anything. I think that's where for appreciation for those guys, I think that's where you got to take that fight. But yeah, that appreciation in the U.S. I don't know how much you're gonna get for that. I know they made a fight not a few years ago with Jake Shields and Damian Maia. They put it as a main event in Brazil. I think if you're gonna make a fight like that at some point down the road, you might have to do that. You might have to put it in a spot like Brazil. Main event slot or high on the card, where you can kind of get you can get another element like the crowd, but behind a Gracie in Brazil. I think that would be a big fight.
At what point do we? I mean, I don't know. Like every time that there's a technical battle of grappling in mixed martial arts, I immediately hear the booming tones of Mauro Ranallo saying that this is a game of kinetic chess, and almost like making an apology to the fans that don't understand what they're watching because they grow restless and tireless. But there is a beautiful art to grappling. I think that jiu-jitsu and grappling as a whole is becoming more, not necessarily accepted, isn't the right word, but like I feel like fight fans and maybe even casual fans to a certain extent with the advent of things like Polaris and EBI and combat jiu-jitsu, there is more of an appreciation for the ground, but it's still not going to be something that is on display in NBA-sized arenas here in the States. And I think even if there is a significant chunk of fans that are in the building for that sort of match, they're going to get sucked into that mob mentality and start booing because people around them are booing. You go to the fights, you want to be a spectator and have fun, you start screaming and hollering despite maybe even knowing a bit more than you're displaying. At what point do we just go, look, Americans that are casual fans are a lost cause. when it comes to appreciating the finer points of wrestling and jiu-jitsu, or do we try to educate these fans? I mean, you guys talk about judges getting better. I mean, fans need to get better, or at least maybe appreciate or understand a bit more. Is the American fan a lost cause when it comes to appreciating the finer points of mixed martial arts?
Go ahead, Mo.
Well, I think that fans, when it comes down to it, fans don't need to do nothing.
Well, they don't appreciate anything.
No, but they're paying for it. So, like,
Sure.
They're paying for it. So, like, when it comes down to it, it's up to them to learn. If they want to watch it, they have to learn what's going on.
But what concerns me about that statement, though, Mo, is we see the biggest promotions on the planet market towards fans. If the interpretation by the fans never change, the sport is going to be continued to be marketed where the hardcore fans are going to criticize some of the matchups that are made because they're trying to move tickets, they're trying to sell
They
pay-per-view
already
buys.
do.
Right, but
It's been that way.
but can it get better? That's the question. You say judges can get better. Can fans
No,
get better?
But the problem is, I don't know. It just comes down to what they're paying for. If the product is worth paying for it, then they'll pay for it.
But I mean, going back to what we were talking on the radio a little while ago, I was talking about this with Bruce Buffer on his podcast about what's the biggest potential fight coming up this year, and they said, "Oh, John Jones and Daniel Cormier fighting Stipe Miocic." No, the most anticipated fight of this year is Justin Bieber and Tom Cruise, and it's not going to happen, but it's the most talked about fight because that's you want to talk about like what moves buzz and fan interest. Fights that are ridiculous and shouldn't ever happen, the talk of that will supersede every good technical matchup. Like, I think we need to demand more out of common
the
culture.
problem is you can't. Most fans in America are casual. Think about it. The hardcore base is always smaller. MMA, the hardcore base, are the people that watch the EBI. The people that watch the people that watch the subcultures of MMA, like the grappling tournaments, the kickboxing, the boxing, and everything else that makes up MMA, those are the hardcore.
But how is this a multi-billion-dollar company when the success hinges upon casual fans? Casuals check in and out all the time. How can the UFC be a multi-billion-dollar company if more than half the audience doesn't appreciate ground fighting?
Entertainment. All you gotta do is be like, well, they make certain matchups. It's entertainment. They make certain matchups. Not too many grappling matches, but here's one thing Dana White does. He'll criticize the grappler, see that you go out there and wrestle, and the fans feel like, okay, Dan's on our side. He's gonna give us the fights we want to see. And then, but I told you guys, I made it to you guys. I want to see two guys laying each other. I want to see two guys go for the finish. Blah 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 blah. And the fans are on his side, and he kind of speaks with them, speaks to them, speaks for them, and that's what he does. Finesses them.
Didn't he deny a contract to somebody because he said that he went for a takedown?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I have a thought on this.
All right.
I think that Ben Askren created a lot of buzz, right? Ben Askren's not known to be the most entertaining fighter in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the buzz that he created with his mouth
Right.
had a lot of people excited to see him and see him go up. Obviously, they want to see him go up against the big names, but
Right.
he's been campaigning for this for a while and talking about it. And man, the fights with Robbie and Jorge the buzz was really high for those fights. And you're talking about a guy who his fighting style is not a fan-pleasing fighting style yet.
Sure.
You have all these polls that have run before his fights talking about how he's the most anticipated fight on the card.
Right.
Despite his fighting style.
Just
I
just
think,
like Chad.
Well,
Just like Chad.
But honestly, just like Floyd Mayweather as well. I mean, Floyd, sold himself as money and all this.
Floyd,
Go ahead.
there's Floyd was Pretty Boy Floyd.
Right.
He was a killer.
Mm-hmm.
The moment he turned to Money Mayweather, that's when he was kind of like, people fell asleep watching them box.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are countless examples of fighters talking and saying and then, maybe having a more safe approach. I think George St. Pierre was a guy that, similar to Floyd, was more of a savage earlier in his career and then lost to Matt Serra and was much more conservative in the octagon, but he was still a superstar. I don't know. It's interesting to me that we want to see. Well, again, maybe I'm speaking from the wrong perspective. We want to see the best fighters are in the world. We want to see them tested. We want to see technique catapult stars to the highest levels. But at the end of the day, if nobody cares about you for whatever reason, whether it's your mouth or your technique, it doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are. You're just not going to get the opportunities that people that move the needle will.
I think they're trying, though. I think they're trying as far as some of these shows that are now being marketed to the masses. Like you see some of these fight wrap-up shows and the pre-fight shows. They're trying to at least educate the fans somewhat on what's going on when it comes to the grappling aspect.
I wonder how many people watch those. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I mean, I appreciate everyone watching us right now.
The hardcore UFC fan. The hardcore UFC fan.
Really, I feel it's the reverse. I never watched those shows and those wrap-up shows. I felt like the casuals who were trying to kind of like figure out what was going on, I felt like that was more marketed towards them, because I wasn't a guy who would watch, the Fox Desk and stuff like that. I would be more in tune to listen to something like this than like because
you're hardcore.
The way it's packaged.
You're wearing a Pride T-shirt right now. That's right. You know what I mean? Like,
that's right.
I'm with you, Mike. I think that the casuals who only consume news released by the UFC or UFC produced type shows are the ones that just keep it on ESPN Plus or tune in before or after a fight. Where hardcores, I mean, I feel like most sports fans are this way, but I think hardcore fans, especially when it comes to mixed martial arts, when they want pre and post fight analysis, they're either seeking out something like they're getting on Between Rounds here, or they are just watching with their phone or their computer in their hands and refreshing Twitter every few seconds and getting analysis that way. I feel like I don't want to dismiss what the UFC is doing as propaganda per se, but it's produced by the company itself. And when it's produced that way, I think it's like the whole show overall, it's being marketed towards that casual fan rather than people that are paying, $10 a month to listen to us on Between Rounds.
Do you think that, like Daniel Cormier's new show, Detail, how do you think that's going to do as far as moving the needle for ESPN Plus? Do you think that's going to be a straight hardcore like haven for the people who are hardcore? Or do you think that they're going to try to market that as more to a casual to kind of explain to them what's going on?
That's a great question. I feel like I feel like maybe it is towards hardcores, Mel, but I feel like hardcore fans also too. I struggle with really understanding.
It's the casual fan looking to become hardcore, because the casual fan needs a bridge to become hardcore. But you can watch more to become more educated and need something else.
But I struggle to really understand what people even seek out anymore, especially with the way that content is disseminated and digested. Like, this is on ESPN Plus. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know many hardcore MMA fans that are stoked about ESPN Plus to like tune in and watch the UFC on it from a live standpoint or the pay-per-view standpoint. I really don't hear anybody, scrolling through the content options that are available on ESPN Plus under the UFC tab.
My casual friends are 100% off ESPN Plus. They're so against it. Nobody
and none of them are sports fans, right?
A couple of them are sports fans, but I'm talking about friends of mine that are not fighters, who are not who work regular jobs.
Normal people,
you normies.
Like you weirdos.
You normies. People who maybe haven't trained. Those friends of mine that I have, they're very against the ESPN Plus thing. They do not like the double paywall, and it's too much. It's just too much work for them. They don't want to go through this new system that they're setting up.
I think that they're just resisting technology.
Maybe.
I feel like if you're a sports fan, ESPN Plus is a no-brainer. I think it's fantastic. I also live out of my home market. I'm from Minneapolis. I can watch Minneapolis sports sometimes on ESPN Plus, but
it's not easy though. You got another step. It's got to be easy.
Sure.
In today's era, it's got to be easy. Why Why is Jorge Masvidal's knockout blown up besides a million reasons? It's 5 seconds long.
Right.
It can be seen multiple times on an Instagram feed. The easier you make it, the more you're going to get. Once you make this extra step.
But what is easy and what isn't easy? Because to me,
man, my dad had a lot of problems with the ESPN
your
Plus.
dad is 50-something, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, my point is this, though.
ESPN, the ESPN Plus, it's stupid, man.
That's not true. That's not true. I watched everything tonight. You guys, I watched everything tonight in my ESPN Plus app. Everything. Okay? Like
but
and you
that's because the fight wasn't a pay-per-view fight, bro. That's why.
But it's all done in the same place. Like what you guys are saying.
I'm pretty sure it was a pay-per-view fight. The prelims go on ESPN2.
Well, I don't even know if I thought the prelims were on ESPN2 tonight. It all blends to me because I go to the same damn place.
It goes ESPN Plus or Fight Pass, ESPN2, the ESPN Plus, the pay-per-view.
There's no live content from the UFC on Fight Pass. It's all on ESPN Plus. See, this is the problem. How long has this deal been going on? 7 months? We're still arguing about where shit is. Like, I watch all of it. I don't even totally know where it is. You know, but, I mean, here's the bottom line. When it comes to what is easy and what is hard, I think you guys are like me. We grew up. I had 4 television channels when I was a kid. You know? ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Probably had another local channel in there that I don't remember, you know, but like the bottom line is what is easy and what isn't. I think it's a generational thing. Downloading an app and watching a show on a smart TV or Chromecasting or doing it on your phone. Like at the end of the day, ESPN Plus, it's a little cumbersome to me, but it's incredibly easy for me to watch the event anywhere. Like I can drive around and I shouldn't be watching it while I'm driving around, but I can have the audio on in my car, you know what I mean? And listen to the play-by-play while I'm going through the car wash because it is that easy. Is it another step? Sure.
That's what I mean. We can argue about how hard that extra step is, but the fact that there is an extra step, however pathetic you might view it as.
What's the target demo, though?
It's another step that people just don't want to do.
I mean, never has Tim Miller lived up to the name Old School before than right now. But what I am saying is, do they lose money because of that extra step? And if so, how much of their consumer base fits in that demographic that goes, shit, this is too hard, I'm not interested?
I just think that they've created an inconvenience because they're making upfront money now, and they're just going to say the fans are going to get used to it. This is the way we're going to go.
But that's on ESPN. That's not on the UFC. You know, the UFC essentially is like, look, here, give us $1 billion, $1 million, and here's the content.
Yeah.
You know, I think, yes, it's cumbersome at first, but once you figure it out, it becomes like everything.
People make quick decisions, though.
Well, do you remember your first phone that didn't have buttons on it? You know, like it had a QWERTY keyboard, like without actual buttons. You know,
like a cell phone.
Yeah. Like when you send a text message, you're not actually touching buttons. Do you remember doing that for the first time? And was it easy or hard for you? Because I could not type on an Apple iPhone for the longest time.
The first phone I ever had was like a little Nokia, and
you have to hit like the number 2
three times to get
A, B, C,
speaking that code.
Right, but you know, when I got a QWERTY keyboard, at first it was a Sidekick where there was actually buttons that I could press and feel.
I knew you were a Sidekick guy.
Well, I had to sit in section 228, row B in the UFC and do play-by-play for Sherdog on that QWERTY keyboard, and it was a lot easier to have a real button to press. Like I could feel, it clicked in, it clicked out. Mm-hmm. When I switched to an iPhone and tried to do play-by-play, it looked like computer code. It was just ones and zeros and nonsense. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while. But now, like, if you give me a phone with actual buttons on it, I don't know what to do with the damn thing. Like, buttons?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So, my point is, what we're accustomed to is always going to be preferred until we just get used to what is ever next.
Right.
And
no, I see your point.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, if this ESPN deal comes and goes and then it's all of a sudden back on regular TV and all you need to do is turn on your TV, people are going to be like, well, what channel is it on? How do I turn on my TV? I don't know. But, yeah. Some more action tonight. Brianna Van Buren, the former Invicta FC champion, got a win over Olivia Renata Souza feather Invicta FC champion, or fellow Invicta FC champion, Van Buren. One of the smallest fighters on roster height-wise, was truly the bigger fighter tonight in the strawweight division. Really battered the Brazilian and picks up her first UFC victory. Benito Lopez victorious over Vince Morales. The unanimous decision goes the way of Lopez. Thought it was a poor decision. I think he had more aggressive movements moving forward throughout 15 minutes, but Morales had the better shots. I think he even outlanded him in a couple of the rounds. But it was, to me, similar to a fighter getting rewarded for throwing and not necessarily landing. I think Leonard Garcia primarily made a career out of that in his mixed martial arts campaign, getting decisions for having quantity over quality. Vince Morales doesn't get the nod, but Lopez does this evening. Jonathan Martinez, brutal KO. Pingwan Liu, TKO, ends the bout at 3 minutes 54 seconds of round number 3. Juliana Pena, victorious tonight. She gets a unanimous decision over Nico Montano. It's been a long time away from the octagon for the Venezuelan Vixen. She gets the nod, despite having kind of an off first round. Once she settled into her game, though, she finally got things going. Mo, do you believe in ring rust? Is that something that you subscribe to? Because some fighters totally go, yeah, it took me a round and a half to kind of get my legs back underneath me, and then other fighters come back like Dominic Cruz did when he fought Takeo Mizugaki.
Well, it depends on your opponent. Depends on how active you are in between your fights. But most of the times, I feel like it's not ring rust. It's just that the person can't gauge their range right away.
So when you say it comes down to the opponent, do you feel like the length and the reach advantage has something to do with how a fighter feels? Like if you're fighting a longer fighter than maybe you have in the past, does that sometimes sort of make the feeling and finding that range a little bit harder than, say, if you were a bit more active?
Well, that plays a part in it, and as well as the movement. If you're dealing with a slick fighter that's like Lyoto Machida when he first hit the scene, if you're dealing with someone like that, you can get countered. You know, be over aggressive, overextend, get taken down, get leg kicked, body kicked, head kicked. Anything can happen. Check hooked. So those things there can happen, man.
Prime Machida is a rough draw coming back from a layoff, TJ. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't bring up Machida. He did. Welcome.
But I mean, just movements. Sometimes if you can't gauge the range and you're chasing and you're extending, chasing somebody, you can get countered.
All right, one more fight to talk about before we get out of here. Andre Touchy-Feely victorious over Shaman Moraes tonight. Beautiful right hand followed with a right high kick initially hurt the Brazilian, and then Feely finished it with another right hand and got the victory. This was a pick'em fight, largely according to the bettors and the sports books. And a lot of people that picked Feely to win thought he would do so with his wrestling and ability to take down Shaman Moraes. Moraes, Muay Thai fighter who got turned on to mixed martial arts with Anderson Silva and Minotaur Nogueira. On paper, he's the better striker, but in application tonight inside the octagon, not necessarily the case. Mike, I know you were in studio and saw the replay of that Feely combination. Any thoughts there for the Team Alpha Male product?
Yeah, I thought it was a great finish by him. He's had a couple setbacks, but he seems to really have just not let it bother him too much and just continued to work on his craft, and I think it really showed tonight. He had a beautiful, what started it off, he had a beautiful right hand, right high kick, same side connection. A lot of times when you throw that right hand, you're hoping that you get the reaction of your opponent slipping the right hand and slipping into the high kick. But it looked like to me that he connected both on the right hand and the high kick. So it was a beautiful technique to start the finish off. I was very impressed by it.
Yeah, solid performance tonight for Andre Touchy-Feely. Any thoughts on the card, Mo, that we didn't hit? Anything you want to get on before we wrap this thing up?
No, but that Brazilian at 185, I forgot his name. Rustam, is that his name? The one that fought is it gonna fight Roberson?
Oh, Wellington Turman.
Term, yeah. I feel like he's from Curitiba, but watching him throw punches, this is like off topic, but watch him throw punches. I'm pretty sure he might have been no Gucci fighter. He moves and throws punches just like Macahau. One of our coaches at our gym. Everything about him was no
what's
Gucci.
his name? I got to see this.
Gucci?
The
No, Noguchi.
Oh.
I know a Noguchi fighter when I see one. What's his name? The fighter that he's talking
Oh,
about?
Turman. Wellington
Okay.
Turman.
I gotta.
We'll go back and
watch
look.
it. Yeah.
I was joking.
he definitely.
I was joking with Mo before we got on the air that we should charge Dan Lambert for this American Top Team Radio show, because that's pretty much what it is. Top Team Radio. All right, well, that pretty much does it for us. Mo, I think we're going to kick off your show this week called The King's Court, or Fight Court with King Mo Lawal. I'm excited for that. And Mike, anytime you want to come down, you're more than welcome.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's nice hanging out with you. It's nice just not sitting alone in this room for 9 hours on UFC Fight Night. Mo, appreciate your time, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, if you missed any part of the show, check it out over on patreon.com/between rounds. We appreciate your support. Appreciate Cappers Direct for letting us be a part of this great YouTube channel. And despite the technical issues, you get to look at my big dumb face and Micah Miller's awesome. Is that orange? Is that what that is? Orange pride shirt? It's pretty rad. Where'd you get that? Is that a Reebok shirt, or is that like old school? No.
This is from UFC Shop.
UFC shopufc.com or whatever?
Yeah.
All right. Are you a member of the UFC Fight Club?
No, definitely not.
Okay. Are you a member of Between Rounds?
No, I'm not.
I think you're on staff.
Yeah, I am.
Perfect. I think I owe you money.
Yeah, you do.
Shit. Give more money, because I got to pay Micah Miller. For King Mo Lawal, Micah Miller, I'm TJ DeSantis. This has been Beaten After the Bell. Thanks for listening.